All right, we're going to start off by going over the homework, which was approximating the square root of 8 to the nearest 100. So let me get rid of this. And I'm going to have to flip the computer back and forth because I need to use a calculator on the Chromebook. And I left my calculator, the other one at the school. All right, so we'll start out with the square root of 8. We'll approximate it, first of all, between the two perfect squares that you see in the number line. So 8 falls after the square root of 4. The square root of 8 falls after the square root of 4 and before the square root of 9. So I know 8 falls between these two perfect squares. And the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. So when it says determine the two integers, the square root of 8 lies between, the square root of 8 lies between 2 and 3, guys. Okay. It says, could you approximate the square root of 8 to the nearest 10? And if so, how? Yes, you can use the two whole numbers and write them in terms of tenths, simply by adding a decimal and a 0. So I'm going to start off with 2 and 3. Change those two whole numbers to tenths by adding a 0 and count the tenths in between, and then check each one because we already know 2 times 2 is 4 and 3 times 3 is 9. So you're only checking the tenths in between. So you're checking 2 and 1 tenth, 2 and 2 tenths. And I'm just going to list these out and you write them down as I list them, okay? All right, so I'm going to be smart about my checking. So I already know that the square root of 8 is very close to the square root of 9. And I know that because 8's really close to 9. Okay. So I'm not going to check anything close to the square root of 4, which is 2. I'm going to go over here on this end and start checking these first, okay? Because the square root of 9 is 3. I know the square root of 8 has to be really, really close. Okay, so let's try 2 and 7/10 squared. If that doesn't work, we'll try 2 and 8/10 and so forth, all right? I'm going to flip my calculator, my Chromebook over so you can see how I'm checking. And if you don't have a calculator at some point, just use the calculator in the Chromebook. All right, let's try 2 and 7/10 and squared and see what we get. Okay, 7 and 29 hundredths, which is pretty low. Let's try 2 and 8/10. Let's square it. 7 and 84 hundredths. Let me write these down before I forget. 7 and 29 hundredths. 7 and 84 hundredths. Let's try 2 and 9/10 and see if we can get closer. Because right now, if you're talking about 7 and 84 hundredths compared to 8, that's like, if you look at it in terms of money, it's like 16 cents, being 16 cents away from 8. All right, so let's try 2 and 9/10. We're looking at 8 and 41 hundredths. So we're over 8. This is 8 and 41 hundredths. This is 41 cents, if you look at it in terms of money, away from 8. This is only 16. So 2 and 8/10 is going to be the best approximation. So to the nearest tenth, the square root of 8 is approximately 2 and 8/10. Now, if you want to get a better approximation, you just go to the nearest hundredth. So just as we use the whole numbers to help us with tenths, we're going to use the tenths to help us with hundredths. So I'm going to go back and take a look. 8 lies between, let me change the colors here so you can see, 7 and 84 hundredths and 8 and 41 hundredths. Therefore, the square root of 8 lies between 2 and 8/10 and 2 and 9/10. So I'm going to use those two tenths, and I'm going to change them to hundredths the same way I change whole numbers to tenths, simply by adding a 0. No need for the decimal because it's already there. Now I'm just going to check the hundredths in between, and this is going to make for a better approximation. So let's list the hundredths in between. And as I write them, you write them, okay? And I need a little more space to finish this out. And that was 2.9, which is the same as 2.90. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to start off with 2 and 8200ths. You can start checking where you want. Again, we're trying to get as close to 8 as possible. So let's square 2 and 8200ths. And we're going to round this to the nearest hundredth, okay? Watch me for the next one. Start the first. So, you can watch me now. I'm just saying, if you want to learn. Okay, so you have 2 and 8200ths. We're going to square that and see how close we get to 8. 7.95. Because that 2 will tell that 5 to stay the same if we're rounding. So that's pretty close. Okay, so that's 7 and 95 hundredths, which is only like 5 cents away from 8. Now let's check this one, just to be sure. So we're going to square 2 and 82 hundredths. 2 and 83 hundredths. 2 and 83 hundredths. Square it. That's like $8.01, because that 8's telling that 0 to go to a 1. Okay, so 8.01. Well, this is like 5 cents away from 8, and this is only 1 cent away from 8. So I can tell you already that 2 and 83 hundredths is going to be my best approximation to the nearest hundredth, okay? And that's how you check it. Now I'm going to have you pause the video, and you're going to try the next one, and then we'll have you unpause and check to see if you got it right. So the next one is approximating the square root of 79. So pause the video and see if you can do it on your own. All right, this is what you should have gotten. The square root of 79 lies between the square root of 64 and the square root of 81. It's after 64 but before 81. As you can tell, 79 is really close to 81. So I already know that the square root of 79 is going to be closer to the square root of 81, which is 9. But the two whole numbers it lies between would be 8 and 9. Square root of 64 is 8. Square root of 81 is 9. So when it says determine the two integers, so the square root of 79 is between 8 and 9. You missed it. All right, so what we're going to do is now we're going to try to get a better approximation instead of just between the two whole numbers. So since I know that the square root of 79 is between 8 and 9, I can get a better approximation if I go to the nearest tenth. So I'm going to change 8 to 8 and 0 tenths. And 9 to 9 and 0 tenths. And then we know 8 times 8 is 64, 9 times 9 is 81. So we're not going to be checking those. We're just taking the tenths that lie in between. So I'm going to go ahead and list them. And then we're just going to check the ones that are closer to 9, because the square root of 79 is very close to the square root of 81. And the square root of 81 is 9. So let's start checking on this end. You don't have to check all of these. So let's start off with 8 and 7/10 squared. Excuse me. All right, I'm going to clear this out and do 8 and 7/10 squared. That's 75 and 69 hundredths. Okay. I'm going to write that down because I'm not going to flip back right now. 75 and 69 hundredths. And then let's try 8 and 8/10 squared. 8.8 square it. That's 77 and 4400s. And again, we're trying to get really close to 79. Okay, let's try 8 and 9/10. That's 79 and 2100s. Okay, so I'm gonna go back and write these down, guys. So 8 and 7/10 was 75 and 6900s. 8 and 8/10 squared was 77 and 4400s. And 8 and 9/10 squared is 79 and 2100. So it's over 79. But I can tell you that 44 cents that's like $77.44. And we're way away from 79. But over here, 8 and 9/10 is a lot closer to 79. So I'm going to approximate the square root of 79 to 8 and 9/10. But if I want a better approximation, I can round it to the nearest hundred. So I'm going to let the tenths help me round it to the nearest hundreds. So I'm going to go back and look. I see that 79 falls between 77 and 4400s and 79 and 2100s. So that that tells me the square root of 79 lies between these two tenths. So I'm going to use 8 and 8/10 and 8 and 9/10, and I'm going to just add a 0 to help me with checking the hundreds, okay? So now I'm going to list all the hundreds that lie in the middle. And this is what you should have done as well. Okay. All right, 8 and 8600s, 8 and 8700s, and I need a little more space. All right, and you can start off by testing any one. I'm just going to start off by testing this one, 8 and 8100s. Let's square that and see how close to 79 we get. Okay, 8 and 8100s squared. We're way away from 79, so let's not even look at that. Okay, that's 77 and 6200s. Yeah, let's not do that because this one was way too low. Let's try something like 8 and 8400s and see what we get. Cut it out. And we'll try 8 and 8400s. We'll square that and see how close we get. That's better. 74 and like 1500s. Excuse me, 78 and 1500s. But it's still a little low. Let's try 8 and 8500s. And then we'll try 8 and 8600s to see if we get a better approximation. Okay, let's try 8 and 8500s. See how close we get to it. Okay, that's 78 and 3200s. All right, we're going to try 8 and 8600s. That's 78 and 49, which is basically 50. That 9 tells that 9 to go to a 10. You can't put two digits in one place value. So this becomes a 0 and this becomes a 5. Okay, let's try 8 and 8700s. That's going to be 78 and 6800s. 8.8800s. 78 and 85. I'm going to try 8.89. Square it. We get 79 and 300ths. Okay. So I'm going to list the last two. I'm going to go with 8 and 8800ths and show you what it gave us when we squared it. It gave us 78 and 8500ths approximately. Those are my little approximation symbols. And 8 and 8900ths when we squared it gave us 79 and 300ths approximately. Well, this is like 3 cents away from 79. Well, this is 15 cents away. Okay. That's 15 cents away from 79. And this is 3 cents away from 79. So the square root of 79, its closest approximation to the nearest hundred would be 8 and 8900ths. And that's how you would do that. Okay, now we're going to skip this because I'm sure we're okay with finding the square root. That was bell work if I was doing it with you in class. So we're not going to worry about bell work. I'm going to show you some steps. If you don't understand the way that I've been doing it, I'm going to show you some steps that will help you. These 5 steps will help you in approximating your irrational number, your irrational square root. But I'm only going to do those 5 steps. I'll make a video if you all tell me today, after this video, if you tell me you still don't understand how to approximate these irrational numbers, I will make a video that goes through these 5 steps. And all you do is follow the steps to help you with approximating your irrational number. But I won't do that video unless you tell me, Miss Blue, I don't get it. So this is just going to be the second option, okay? So if you need option number 2, and you know you're not getting this, you're going to pause the video and you're going to let me know you need option number 2. And I come back to the house, or sometime after school today, I make another video. And you'll watch from option 2, okay? But for these, I'm just going to continue to do what we've been doing, just using the common sense approach to approximating these irrational numbers. But I need to list my perfect squares up here. So I'm going to go ahead and list perfect squares. So I have 1, 4, 3 times 3 is 9, 4 times 4 is 16, 25, and so forth. So list your perfect squares for me, okay? While I list them, you list them as well. And let's go out to the first 15. So what I'm going to do is approximate these to the nearest hundredth. I'm going to do 2, and you're going to pause the video and you're going to do 2. Or what I'll do is I'll do 2, and then I'm going to assign 2 for homework. All right. And you can work on those 2 that I assigned. You can work on those 2 together with somebody in your class while I'm helping the other group. All right. So let's take a look at the square root of 15. So I know the square root of 15 has to lie between the square root of 9 and the square root of 16, because 15 is between these 2 perfect squares. That's supposed to be 16. All right. All right, so that tells me the 2 whole numbers that the square root of 15 is between 3 and 4. Now I'm going to use those to help me with tenths. Remember, we're going to the nearest hundred. So that's going to be 3 and 0 tenths and 4 and 0 tenths. I'm just going to list them going up and down or vertically instead of side to side, because I need all this space over here for B and C, okay? All right, so we're going to check the tenths just by using a vertical column. So I have 3 and 1 tenth, 3 and 2. You go ahead and list. I will tell you that 15 is closer to 16. So I know the square root of 15 is very close to the square root of 16, which is 4. So when I get ready to check these tenths, I'm going to check a number that's closer to 4. So let's start off with maybe checking 3.7 squared. And then we'll check, 3 and 8 tenths squared. If we need to, we'll check 3 and 9 tenths. Your approximation should be right here, because here's when we're going to round. These should be equal signs. Let's try 3 and 7 tenths squared. 3 and 7 tenths squared is 13 and 69/100. That's like too low for me. We're trying to get close to 15. Let's try 3 and 8 tenths squared. That's 14 and 44/100. That's closer. Let's write that down. 14 and 44/100. And then 3 and 9 tenths squared. Remember, you're only allowed to use the calculator to check. No calculators until you're ready to check, okay? This is all basically manual. You do it by hand. 15 and 21/100. All right, so I'm going to go back because that's over 15. So we're not going to worry about that one. 3 and 8 tenths was approximately 14 and 44/100. 3 and 9 tenths is approximately 15 and 21/100. So I know that this is only like 21 cents away, or this is 56 cents away from 15. So to the nearest tenth, the square root of 15 is closer to 3 and 9 tenths. But my directions say you need to approximate it to the nearest hundredth. So I'm going to use those 2 tenths that it's between to help me with the hundreds. So I can tell that 15 is between 4 and 44/100 and 15 and 21/100. That tells me that the square root of 15 is in between 3.8 and 3.9. So when I use those 2 tenths, I'm going to use a different color. And go with hundreds. And this is just the way you're going to check it, guys. So I started off 3 and 8 tenths. And here 3 and 9 tenths. Just add a 0 to get hundreds. And then list the hundreds in between. And if you do it this way, it'll conserve a little more space. I can tell you that I'm going to check something closer to 3.9, because 3.9 squared was 15 and 21/100. So I'm going to check 3 and 88/100. Then I'll check 3 and 89/100, okay? Let's check 3 and 88/100 and see what we get. Okay, so we're at 15 and 5/100. We're at 15 and 5/100. So I'm gonna go back to 3 and 87/100, guys. Okay, 3 and 87/100. So we're gonna go back down because we're already over 15. 3 and 87/100 is gonna be 14. It's like 6 tells that to go to a 7 to 8. So 14 and 98/100. All right, so this, if I square that, is approximately 14 and 98/100. And this approximated is 15 and 5/100. This is like 5 cents away from 15, and this is only 2 cents away from 15 to 98 cents. So to the nearest hundredth, I'm going to approximate the square root of 15 to 3 and 87/100, guys. All right, I'm going to have to assign 3 problems for homework. So I'm going to assign, because I've done 3. I did the square root of 8 with you, which was your homework from last night, the square root of 79, and the square root of 15. I want you to try the square root of 56, B, C, which is the square root of 90, using the same method, guys. D, use the square root of 29. We'll do the square root of 29. But these I'm going to cover real quick, and they're very easy, okay? I'm going to cover these two real quick. Now, it says that your homework comes from this page. I'm going to take that off of Google Classroom. I just want you to approximate those three for me that I assigned B, C, and D from in the notes. And we'll do these 2 pages for classwork tomorrow. And tomorrow, also, if you don't understand the method I've taught today, you'll have a video on the second option. All right. It says, which value best represents point A on the number line? Well, if you look at point A is between which two whole numbers? Well, A is between 5 and 6. And all your options are square roots. Okay? All those are square roots. So what you're going to do is you're going to convert 5 to something you can take the square root of. Well, 5 is the square root of 25. And 6 is just the square root of 36. And if you don't remember that, you should be able to tell from the charts that we had here. 5 is the square root of 25, and 6 is the square root of 36. So just go back to these number lines if it's going to help you. All right, so if A lies between the square root of 5 and the square root of 25 and the square root of 36, I must be looking for a number that falls between these two. Some square root that lies between these two. And that would only be that one, which is the square root of 34. All right. You're going to pause the video, and I need you to find the best representation for point X. So you're going to choose A, B, C, or D on this next one. And keep in mind the X falls between 6 and 7. Pause the video and try that one. All right. This is what you should have gotten. 6, in terms of a square root, is the square root of 36. And 7, in terms of a square root, is the square root of 49. So I'm looking for a number or a square root here, one of these that falls between these two. And that would just be the square root of 43. The square root of 43 is after 36, but before the square root of 49. Okay? And that's all you would do. Okay, so for today, all you're going to work on is B, C, and D. I need you to approximate those to the nearest hundredth for me, okay? And use the method that I've taught you. And again, let me know if you don't understand this first method I've taught you. And I will show you how to use this option, okay, in a video tomorrow. But for today, just work with somebody on the B, C, and D for me. And we'll watch that video tomorrow if you don't understand this option I taught today. And we'll also work on classwork tomorrow. So no homework. This will be classwork tomorrow. This is not your homework. Your homework is B, C, and D. I don't want to say no homework because you got 3 problems. All right. Thanks, guys.